Hello everyone, welcome to the channel. My name is Derek. I hope you are all doing well. This video I'm going to be talking about Snow White. I just saw Snow White a couple days ago. I did an out of theater reaction for it, and now I'm going to give you the most fair and honest review I can and give kind of an in-depth analysis of the film itself, and of course the many controversies that have drowned this movie for years now. And get a couple things out of the way. I am a Disney hater. Okay, I've always hated Disney movies, and I frankly have never seen the original Snow White. I have no attachment to the original material at all. I've never seen any version of the story. I was really interested in seeing Snow White and the Huntsman when it came out. I just never got around to it. So I have no attachment to Snow White or the character at all. I also have to mention I am on the right wing of politics these days. And I've seen every conservative commentator bitching about this movie for actual years now. Ever since Rachel Zegler was cast and the first footage was released, and it was known what changes Disney was going to make to the story. It has been a hot topic in the world of political commentary. Now, I'm not going to stand here and tell you this is the worst movie ever made, or the movie made me want to die or anything, but the movie is god-awful. It's god-awful, okay? And it's awful because of the filmmaking itself. It is not awful because of wokeness. It's not awful because of the politics of the actors or anything like that. The movie is just terrible because of the movie, because of all of the decisions that were made by the writers and the director and the producers. There is just so much about this movie that just doesn't make sense. Nothing really fits together, and nothing about this movie seems to have come from any kind of source of inspiration or love for the original material, or be made with any sort of real thought. And of course I have to mention the director of the film, who is Mark Webb. Now, Mark Webb is somebody that I like quite a bit. He started off in his career by making a lot of music videos that I'm sure you've seen a lot of, music videos that have meant a lot to me and I grew up watching. He did many videos for My Chemical Romance. He did videos for Good Charlotte, for Green Day, Three Doors Down, Evanescence, Yellowcard, Fergie, Weezer, Regina Spektor, Avril Lavigne, AFI, Maroon 5, Jesse McCartney, and even Diddy. Alright. And he also, this is why I know him well, he directed the film 500 Days of Summer, which is a wonderful movie. When it came out, I had the DVD and I watched it 100 times, and it's just amazing. It was my favorite movie for a period of time. That's great. He also directed another smaller movie called Gifted from 2017, which I ended up seeing in the theater after a friend had recommended it to me, and that movie is great as well. He also directed the two amazing Spider-Man reboots with Andrew Garfield. The first one is really good in my opinion. I never saw the second one. But he is a talented director in my opinion. I think he's much better with smaller material than he is with these big, giant studio movies. So I was kind of hopeful going into this because I like him as a director, but also he is not best suited for these giant blockbuster movies. He's better off with the more independent, material. And we have to talk about Rachel Zegler, of course, because she is really the most controversial part of the movie. Of course, when she was announced as the star of the film, that is kind of when the controversy started, I think, because she doesn't look like Snow White. Now, I know a lot of people say that is a racist opinion, but I mean, Snow White is the character is pale. That is her name. Snow White, she is pale. Rachel Zegler is not pale at all. Okay, and so right off the bat, we're casting somebody who does not fit the role. You know, this is something I think too about something that Hollywood had been doing in the past several years, where at least considering changing the race or the gender of a classic character. That to me is almost offensive on its own, being like, hey, we're not going to create something new for a non-white actor for representation. We're going to take this IP, this name of Snow White. We're going to take this and put a Latina actor in that role. We're not going to create a Disney princess that of a different ethnicity. We're not going to do like a Moana or Encanto or Coco or somebody like that who is a new character. We're going to use our classic, character that everybody knows and just replace it with a different looking actor. Now, of course, Rachel Zegler is she is super duper next level woke. I mean, she just is. She most recently tweeted or posted something on her story after the 2024 election, wishing that Trump himself and Trump voters never know peace, which is a pretty strong statement, whether you agree with it or not. And of course, she's tweeted out "Free Palestine" a great many times, or at least more than once, rather, putting her at odds, of course, with Gal Gadot, who is also the star of the film, shares the screen with her, who is very pro-Israel. She's Israeli. She is the most famous, Israeli in Hollywood, or frankly in the world, really. And she was Gal Gadot was Miss Israel in the Miss Universe pageant back in the day. And I think I'm a fan of Gal Gadot, and she has been really politicized lately to kind of a ridiculous degree, and not looking at her on her own merits as, an actress or a celebrity, but just with her connection to, the state of Israel. And I frankly have always been a fan of her since she was cast as Wonder Woman. I think she's wonderful. She's great as Wonder Woman, and I've liked her really in everything I've seen her in. But in this movie, she is terrible in this movie. Okay, her performance is just really not good in any way, and it is that kind of acting where it's the kind of acting that you think of when you say bad acting. Like if somebody says, "Oh, the acting's really bad," in your head, you imagine the kind of performance that Gal Gadot gives here. Now, her as the evil queen, I mean, she looks great. I mean, her costume design is terrific. The costume design is honestly, for the evil queen at least, I don't think it's really very good for any other character in the movie. I think the Snow White costume looks really ridiculous, more like a Halloween costume, where like you would pay like an actor to play like a Disney princess at a kid's birthday or something. That's kind of like what it looks like. It looks really ridiculous. So the costume on the evil queen looks pretty great, but Gal Gadot's performance is just really it's bad. And I don't mean to just be one of those people who says, "Oh, it's so bad, it's just so bad," but it's just, there's not a whole lot going on in this movie, right? This movie is more controversy than movie, and so she doesn't have a whole lot of material to work with. Neither does Rachel Zegler. Honestly, there's not a whole lot of material for anybody in this movie. And I never understood why people would say Gal Gadot was like a bad actress. Like, I never got that at all. And in this movie, I kind of got it. Like, oh, she's not really delivering much emotion, and kind of when she is, it feels extremely forced and just unnatural. And it seemed like Gal in particular seems to be one of the people who just wants to get this movie kind of over with, And of course, about the controversy of Rachel Zegler, one of the main things with her, besides her initial casting, was saying that she did not like the original story. She didn't like it at all. She was complaining about the kind of gender dynamics in the story, and saying that they were going to change Snow White to be much more feminist and more empowering for Snow White herself. Just publicly going out and saying that the original story was not good and she wanted to change it, and obviously angering people who were, big fans of the original story and are big fans of Disney and didn't want to see their favorite story diminished in any way. So like I said, the movie itself is just very simple and very pointless, and I think that visually it's pretty nice at times. It's beautiful in some shots here and there. Of course, it is mainly CGI. Of course, besides the few main actors in it, we have to talk about, the CGI dwarves. Those are really awful and unnerving, and they just kind of like don't make any sense. There's also another actor in the movie who is somebody with dwarfism, So you're going to cast like one guy who is a dwarf actor, but not cast these 7 dwarves with actual actors. They are CGI creations. It doesn't really make any sense to me, and it's just, it's kind of awful. Talking about Gal Gadot's performance again, like her total lack of emotion and genuine kind of expression. Or at times she's being outacted by these CGI animals. There's a squirrel in there at one point who is very expressive, So the CGI is, I guess you could say it's well done, but it doesn't make sense within the context of the story. It just clashes very much with everything. There are a lot of new songs in here. I think there are more new songs than original songs from the classic Snow White. And one of them in particular, none of the songs are good in my opinion. One of the new songs is called Princess Problems. Now, the song, by the way, in this movie, the prince is a bandit who is kind of the love interest, sort of, and he is lecturing Snow White about her privilege as a princess. The song is called Princess Problems, and when I saw it, I was just thinking one thing, which is the lyric goes, "Sounds an awful lot like Princess Problems." Yeah, it sounded a lot like it's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. That was all I was thinking in the theater. Now, I've been very negative about this movie so far, okay? But on the lead up to the release, right? Because, everybody is going to ready to hate this movie, right? It started to get some good reviews that showed up, and they're very suspiciously super positive about it. Saying it was one of the best live-action Disney remakes so far, which is not a high bar necessarily, but I was like, oh, cool, this might actually be good in some way. And I love movies that are typically hated or not respected. A lot of my favorite movies are movies that are not well rated or well received in any way. So I was like kind of cheering for this movie, you know what I mean? Like I just wanted it to be good. I wanted I wanted it to kind of prove people wrong in a way. And I went into this movie with that attitude, and it was during the whistle while you work sequence where I started sitting there and I had the thought, this is hell, okay? This movie is hell, and I cannot wait for it to be over. And more than I have in a long time, I was really looking at, trying to look at the clock and and think, oh, like how long have we been in here? How much time is there left? And uh, I could feel that from kind of everybody, And I saw this movie with family. So I saw it, of course, with my wife and with my mother-in-law. If you ever hear me referring to my mom in these videos, that's who I'm talking about. I saw it with my sister-in-law and 3 kids. Okay, and absolutely nobody seemed to be having a good time. Okay, and the theater was it wasn't full by any means, but there were other people in the theater, and nobody seemed particularly excited to be there. The kids didn't seem very entertained at all, and it's just it is really, it's rough to get through. It's rough to get through. And I noticed too, like, there's always this conversation about wokeness in movies, right? Especially with Disney. Oh, they cast this person, so that means it's woke or something. But this movie is pretty, like, politically woke, right? The dwarves at one point are talking about the Queen's economic policy and talking about greed and ethics. And I lean over to my wife, who is a fan of the original Snow White story, and has obviously seen the original before. And I say, hey, they talk about economic policy in the original. And she was like, no. And and there's a whole lot of discussion among people in the movie about like privilege and economic inequality and things like that, and that's kind of been recognized even from people who are kind of on the left, thinking like, what is this movie talking about? Why is this Disney movie discussing leftist politics? So the movie is just such a mess, and in ways that I really don't understand. And I'm going to go through some of the changes that were made from the original if you're not familiar, if you haven't seen this thing yet. So the prince is not really a prince. He is a bandit. Snow White's name no longer comes from her pale snow-like skin. It comes from that she was born during a blizzard, so they started calling her Snow White. Now, a bunch of new songs, of course. Dopey now talks. Snow White doesn't bake pies for the dwarves. And there is no glass coffin, which I haven't even seen the original movie, but I know that image. I've seen that image everywhere. It's iconic. It's like an iconic film moment. The glass coffin, it's not in there at all. So it makes me think, like, what is the point? What is the point of this? You're making a Snow White movie with so many of the core iconic moments missing. There are so many elements of the original that are just not here at all. Why don't you make another, like, princess movie? Make an original Disney princess. Make her she's a Disney princess. Maybe she has a darker skin tone that, Rachel Zegler would be perfect for, and have a story that makes sense. You could use elements that they have in this movie and just make it an original thing. And of course they don't do that because, that IP, that Snow White name is what's going to sell tickets, It's going to be much harder to sell something totally new and original, and a lot of these a lot of these Disney remakes, rather, are enormously successful, even though they are the same exact story. Ironically, this is the only, Disney remake that isn't the same old story, since they changed so much. But I remember when I started my job at the IMAX in Branson, it was the very first like opening day of Beauty and the Beast, and that movie came out. That sold out the IMAX for weeks and months. Like it was crazy that it was it was selling out theaters for like months. Everybody wanted to see that. That was immensely popular, and I ended up seeing that movie on the last day it was at the theater, and it's well made. Okay, like I'm not crazy about the story, but it's a very well made movie. It's beautifully put together. The Lion King remake was really it was well made, and of course it was massively popular. That was also selling out the IMAX for quite some time, and all these movies tend to be super successful financially. And if I have any question for the super Disney fans out there, the kind of people who, they have like Disney bumper stickers, and they go to Disneyland every year, and they're all about it. They're all about Disney and stuff. Like, what do you get out of this? What do you get out of the movies that are constantly just redoing the classic Disney stories? Like, what do you get out of it personally? Because they're going to run out of the classic the Disney princesses to remake pretty soon, I think. And it's just a corporation with so few ideas that they have to cannibalize their own like back catalog to make something new, a new kind of event to bring people out to the theater, and in the case of Snow White too, I understand why, because of the IP, but also why not make a new Disney princess? It would be so much less controversial if you had just created a new character for Rachel Zegler to play, a new character that did not have the attachment to this beloved classic property, and of course it would still be controversial because of the politics of the cast and things like that, but still, it would have been a much smoother release, I think, if you had just done something new. It reminds me of those like historical epics that change so much about the person they're portraying. It's like, why, like the Napoleon movie by Ridley Scott, that changed so much about Napoleon's story. Why didn't you just write a movie about a fictional emperor, somebody that didn't exist, but they take place in a big time in history or something? Why do you have to attach a name to it, and that's real, and that people have their own preconceived opinions of, or they have an interest in? If you're really into, say, Napoleon, again, like if you want to go see a movie about Napoleon and you see it and it's historically inaccurate, you're going to be disappointed. But if there was some fictional king or some fictional historical figure, you could have that inspired by real people, but it would still be its own original thing. And especially when we're talking about fantasy, like that Disney does so successfully, they are creating more problems for themselves than they are printing money by just slapping their classic titles on something new that doesn't even resemble the classic thing very well. And I think that the movie itself is going to be really easily forgotten. I think Snow White is not going to be remembered at all. I don't think the people that are hating on it now are going to remember it in a couple years. Like the movie is terrible, but it's also like, you can just like let it go. It doesn't have any really remarkable thing about it. I think, Rachel Zegler, honestly, like, will probably have some difficulty in getting cast, I think, going forward, especially in like a large production, because she is, as others have already said, a PR nightmare. if you are going to um, trash the company that you're working for, the character that you are playing, if you are going to have such extreme political opinions that are, angering the at least half of the country, if you are out here being as like brazenly controversial, that is going to be, looked down upon by the executives that are hiring you, and that is going to be a problem for you in securing another role. Whether you think Rachel Zegler is great or you think she's awful, that doesn't really matter. That's just kind of like a fact of the matter that it's going to be difficult for her, in my opinion. That's my guess. And she is talented. I mean, as a singer, she's good. And ironically, she's kind of one of the best things about the movie. I think Rachel Zegler is a talented singer, and her performance is fine. And the visuals are good at times, at least. CGI is well done. I mean, like that's all I've really got for it. Like I said, the costume design on Gal Gadot is great. But ultimately, there's just so much things about this movie that just don't make sense, and the whole audience is kind of left like, why are you doing this? This doesn't make sense at all. And another thing people have really pointed out already, but I find kind of amusing, is that the idea of the evil queen is that she is jealous of the beauty of Snow White, and they cast Gal Gadot as the queen who is jealous of another woman's beauty. Like, whatever you think about her as an actress, like, she is generally considered one of the most like beautiful women in Hollywood. Like, right? I think the same thing for the Snow White and the Huntsman movie back in the day. Like, Charlize Theron was the evil queen who was jealous of Kristen Stewart. Not to say Kristen Stewart or Rachel Zegler are like unattractive in any way, but that is funny to me in a way. And it seems that Disney itself knows that this movie is just really not good. Of course, it was not really screened for critics. That's always a telltale sign of a movie being terrible, that they won't even show a critic anything. And of course, they like scaled back the premiere like crazy. That's never a good sign either. I think everybody just wants to get this movie over with. To conclude, should you see Snow White? Should you see this movie? And I would say no. Absolutely not. Unless you are wanting to see for yourself, after all the controversy, after everything that's been said and written about this movie behind the scenes with, the actors, I was just reading more about it, Rachel Zegler and Gal Gadot being having a lot of tension between each other, obviously not having anything in common, not getting along politically, obviously. This movie is more controversy than movie, as I said. And I just think there is just, as a movie itself, it's got nothing to offer, really. There's a couple things you could find in there, but that's it. And I mean, if you have kids, you'll probably go see this movie, because that's what these Disney movies are for you to take your kids to a theater and give them something to do for a couple hours, But if you don't have kids, if you're like just a hardcore Disney fan, I can't imagine you'd be really thrilled with this movie at all. And it's just not a good movie, and it also doesn't help support quality film and quality stories and original filmmaking if you go out and give money to this movie that is just corporate reheated garbage. That's what this movie really is. And like I said, there's nothing special about this movie. It'll be forgotten in a year or two. And I hope Disney, if it wants to to continue and grow like we know it wants to. It needs to have more original ideas, and it needs to have a better sense of what the audience actually wants. It needs to be thinking properly before it releases a movie like this, before it pours nearly $300 million into this movie. It costs $300 million for this, right? You have got to think better before you sink money into a project like this. So studios in general, Hollywood in general, needs to have a better idea of what the audience is looking for and a better idea of what is going to do well. So those are my thoughts on Snow White. Like I said, I'm not totally invested in this movie at all. I have no opinions about the original Snow White, or I don't really care about Disney or anything like that. But as a movie itself, it is not good, and it is a bad sign of, yet another bad sign of how Hollywood is not in a great state at all. Thank you all for watching. If you, by any chance, this is my first video you've seen, I do a weekly show called The Art Block on Monday nights. It's just about 15 minutes or so where I talk about anything in the world of art, culture that's on my mind. And of course, this is my first full review on this channel. I'm looking to do more of those. So if you like what you see here, just subscribe, let me know in the comments, share it with your friends, and thank you guys so much. What a time to be alive.